All right. Good evening. So I have your paper here and I want to talk about it. I'm going to talk about things that I enjoyed most about it. And I'm also going to talk about things that could be improved within it. So without further ado, let's get into it, okay? So, as far as my feedback goes, I broke it down point by point and paragraph by paragraph. So I see that you opened it by saying, as you know, some Yanks hate immigrants because we work harder than them. Another thing is that immigrants that graduated from high school are working in fields or restaurants because they thought this country will be the house for many immigrants, but they're working to support their families in their countries. Okay. So my comment here is the main point is driven. So I understand your claim that some Americans oppose immigration because they see immigrants as a threat to their job security, even though many immigrants are even more hardworking than most American citizens, it seems. And it was catchy, the interesting terminology that I caught in here. You stated those Yanks, referring to Americans, Northern Americans, that refer to specifically people who may be better off, well off financially, Americans that may look down on certain immigrants. And so you use the terminology those Yanks, even though I think it's a little informal for a paper, it is unique and catchy. So that does showcase your creativity and uniqueness in your writing style. And then, but also I want to look at the last portion of the sentence. There was an inconsistency I found here. You mentioned immigrants thought this country will be the house for many immigrants, but they're working to support their families in their countries. So that part of it, I'm not totally sure what the direction is going in that. So that's one piece we could work on. Okay, so now we're going into the second paragraph. You wrote, my question is, when does the government will give money to go to university, or when is he going to give chances to go to a university and work at the same time? We can pressure the government by making protest or sending a letter to the White House. Okay, so on the plus side, I love this idea of pressuring the government for grants by protesting or sending them a letter, but who's he referring to in the paragraph? Would that be the president? Though, with that said, in this one, I'm not sure what the exact clear point is, but you do have a piece in here that maybe is the point. Utilizing our First Amendment rights to protest, because that falls under the Constitution, our rights. So this could come in handy to make the country a better place, and the best way to do that is to take action and writing to your local politicians or the president, federal politicians, really anyone you want, or all of them even. So, so you know that action has to be taken. I will get more into that in just a little bit. So now let's see the third paragraph. You said, until now, the government cannot do something for immigrants and the employer continue exploiting the workers or students' workers. You said cannot do something, but what specific action do you wish the government would take in this situation? To add to your point, you use the word exploiting. So I assume that means paying low wages and taking advantage of immigrants that they know they can, correct? Okay. So then the fourth paragraph, you gave a personal example here, which I thought was really good for a paper. 8 years ago, Domingo came from Chile. When he came, Domingo decided to go to the school. 1 year ago, he graduated from high school, but he could not go to university because he's an immigrant, like a lot of Latinos in the United States. So I'm guessing Domingo is either a family member or a friend that you know personally. Is the reason that he can't go to a university because he can't afford it, or lack of resources provided for him? Or so here, I'll ask you, what barriers are there and what barriers could be removed? But a great job providing a relevant example here, because this is tied into your everyday life. So you have an experience to justify the argument here. Okay, so now the fifth paragraph, you say, I have a dream, indent. or enter next paragraph. I am fighting for immigrant rights to go to the university. Immigrants cannot go to university because we don't documents, or most of the time the government thinks we are lazies or we bring bad things like drugs, for example, cocaine. So my comment here is, so there's only half context to the reason immigrants can't go to university. Is this because they don't qualify for government loans, or is it harmful stereotyping, or both? So we could transition better from point to point also. There is a little bit of jumping around in this, like the order of this could be a little more organized, I'll say that. So then, okay, so the sixth and final paragraph, you said sometimes exploit immigrants in their works or the employer of that company threaten them. They say they're going to call ICE to decide what to do, help us to protest for equalities in immigrants, worker, or students. So the big picture point here, labor abuse is a problem in the country. And this is especially true for certain immigrants because certain employers have this idea that they could pay the immigrants less. They hire them so they could pay them less, just take advantage of them, take advantage of language barriers, and assume they won't question them or do anything, and they'll do anything for monetary gain, money. So what forms of protest would you find the most effective here? I would suggest writing a letter to both your local, state, and federal politicians, like I suggested earlier. And then as for the writing piece here, I decided to piece up a graphic organizer for you so that you have a main idea, four supporting ideas, and then a conclusion. So your main idea here, you passionately stated that immigrants contribute positively to the country and deserve opportunities to succeed that could be improved by the government, that could provide them with more opportunities. And you could do this by writing to your local politicians. So then we have supporting idea one, that immigrants are not getting enough help from the government. We have supporting idea two, immigrants seem to be exploited for cheap labor that employers know they can't legally pay undocumented workers. Supporting idea three, protesting the lack of resources could help immigrant rights. Supporting idea four, without documents, there's a lack of access to many resources that could help immigrants go to college. Additionally, stereotyping is hindering immigrants' chances to succeed. So now I decided to come up with a conclusion where I summarize this all up, where adding to your points here, the big picture of this could get brought down here to the conclusion where we say, in order to help immigrants, we can write a letter to the government or the White House, like you mentioned, to provide us with equal resources. So writing this, I would say I learned how to analyze student work under challenging conditions, including poor grammar and not having access to speak to the student in person about what went well and what needs improvement. And I learned that it's important to be equitable and fair with feedback in a paper, especially that is about making one type of argument for a free and fair society that is just under the law. And I realized the importance of being interested as a reader in student writing. And I get a chance to learn from them, not just them learning from me. And even though there were grammatical and spelling issues, the points were driven home, and they're very close to getting to where they have potential to go. Because I think it's important to focus on the substance's intent instead of like the spelling and grammar, like I mentioned. And I took the graphic organizer approach because I found it the most straightforward. It breaks down multiple layers simply that just drive the main point home. And so this works well with English learners like this student. It also works well with special education students with IEPs. And I think it's useful for really anybody who's just seeking to have a more organized set with their schoolwork, with their writing. And so challenges and concerns that I faced during this. So I mentioned that the grammar was a little bit of a challenge for me. I had to read some things a couple times, and then also uh, another challenge was in person, not have not having access to this paper and the student in person for one-on-one, so we could have a smoother conversational element about it. So the student knows about the problem he wants to address regarding immigrants in the US. He's very passionate about the subject and he has examples to back up his claim. And he's familiar with the negative connotations and stereotypes from Americans, mentioning Yankees, uh, kind of viewing others as inferior. So, knowing your position of immigrants in the society where you want them to have rights and be able to go to school, go to work safely, and have access to opportunities that everybody else has access to. And the students ready to learn the gender nouns and pronouns used in English, like, for example, referring to the government as he. Understandably in Spanish, there is a different form of the masculine and feminine verbs and nouns. So that's one thing we could work on. And then there was the syntax issue of run-on sentences and sentence fragments that may have been translated from Spanish that coincide with grammar, punctuation, spellings, and comma misuse. So I came up with the graphic organizers, and then also some sentence starters could be beneficial for the student, like saying immigration can benefit our country by blank, or common misconceptions about immigration may include blank. So I found the paper effective. The points were conveyed well. The writer has interesting ideas, but how to express them, he still is learning. But with that said, it's on its way to a masterpiece because he really knows the basics, at the very least, about who he is and what he's fighting for. So this was a very interesting perspective I gained from this, and I will definitely be using things like graphic organizers working with students to better understand them and how they learn in the future.